Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Greg and I are out here scouting and we're looking for potential rut stands and access routes to them. That's what we're going to be discussing on the video. We'll show you our whole thought process from start to finish and show you how to find some good rut stands for this fall.
House cat.
House cat. Dust. This car's got a hole in the floorboards. Dust just comes up everywhere. Pretty gross. Hey, there's a quail on that hay bale right there.
Yep.
There he goes. Hip waders. I need those bad boys. Greg and I are headed out today to do a little scouting. We're going to a spot that I hunted last fall where me and Eric Barber almost killed a buck.
Bet.
We have squandered so many opportunities this year, it's not even funny. We're starting to call it the cursed season so far.
You gonna hit the links afterwards?
I'd like to. Oh, that's a good one. Greg and I were just walking on the path on the way in. I'm sure you all saw how thick that grass and stuff was. And this ditch is only, what, 15 yards probably from that path out there. This drainage ditch leads straight into the river that we're going down and into. That's kind of what I'm going to try to talk about on today's video. Is we're out here scouting in midsummer first and foremost for access. This is a spot that I want to hunt this fall, that I've hunted in the past, but last year our access wasn't very good, so we're coming in and we're scouting a different access route to get into the spot. So we already have the spot kind of picked out. I mean, we're going to get back in there and try to reaffirm some things once we get there. But this ditch is real cool. It's perfect to get down below the deer and slip in down in here, but we still got quite a ways to go. Can you see that line of like willows and nasty stuff out in there? That's all good bedding. And there's the ditch that we just came out of, right behind Greg. And we're about 3 or 4 feet higher than we were down in that ditch. So if there's deer out there in that marsh or close to that bedding of a morning or of an evening, you can slide right past them right here. This would be a good little tree row to get an observation stand in too. You know, you're just about the right distance away from that bedding where you could come in here, hang a stand in one of these trees along this ditch, and you can observe all of that. Now, come the rut, hunting pressure will probably kick most of that bedding out and move them further into the marsh, but during the early season, the first few days of season, it's very possible that a mature buck could be living out there. So what we would do is come in here and do an observation sit right in this ditch, watch that from a couple hundred yards away, and then if we see a shooter buck, then the next night or the next night with the correct conditions, we would move in on him and try to set up a little bit closer. That doe's right there. There's a little patch out in the middle of dried up marsh, and I don't know what's growing up out there. It looks like smartweed, maybe some other stuff. But these deer will browse in that marsh all year. There's all kinds of native plants and stuff out there that they like to eat. And right now Greg and I are standing on top of this dike. And that's why when we saw her, we had to basically freeze. So if you're walking in on the top of this thing, or across that ditch on that road that we were just coming in on a few minutes ago, you're going to be sunk because she's going to see you. But as you can tell, I'm going to show you what this looks like from down in the ditch. Y'all can see all that right now. I'm going to walk back down in this ditch. With just a few feet of elevation change, now we're completely hidden. this is the perfect height to get down below those deer. And it's nice and quiet down through here. I mean, that doe would be out there feeding in that spot early morning, and we could slide right by her without her knowing. That's a good sign. We're gonna keep going down this ditch now though, and try to see if we can cross that river, because this is a good spot. The spot we're going to is a great spot. I see them in here all the time in the marsh, just eating lots of this stuff. I have no idea what these plants are called, but see how they've just been browsing the stems off of those? And then as you look up through here, they've just browsed all these stems off. You know, I mean, y'all saw last year they were eating that duck potato down in the marsh at the beginning of the year, January 2nd or 3rd, when we killed that buck during the late season. So this stuff can't be overlooked. I mean, everybody's constantly looking at corn and beans and traditional ag and acorns, of course, but bucks and deer in general in the marsh will feed on all this natural browse, and they'll use it year round. I mean, that's what that doe's doing right now. Hip waders are real nice, especially like these where they can fold down like that. I just hunt in them a lot of the time. I'll either hunt with them folded down or I'll walk in with them like this. The only bear with hip waders is that they're kind of noisy, but if they allow you to get into a place where other people aren't going, they're definitely worth it. Made it down here to the river, and right there's the ditch. That doe was over there in the marsh a while ago, and she's filtering back to bedding this direction. There's a little bit of bedding out there. Where I had that encounter with that buck last fall that I should have killed was right down there about 300 yards from here. And Eric and I had to do the same thing. We had to access through the creek that morning in the dark, but we ended up coming in from a long ways to the south, and this is much, much easier, and it's a much better way to get in here without spooking deer. Look out there in that marsh, that's where we just saw that doe cross the river. In the fall, this is really open in here. We just crossed that river. You can tell down there, as soon as we pop up out of it, we're looking for trees. Because as you can tell, the river bottom itself is not very wide right here before it goes out into the marsh. You only got about 40-50 yards of good trees to hunt in. There's a big deadfall up here, which may steer the deer one way or the other. But here's that deadfall right there. The creek's only about 25 yards that direction, so if we can find a real good tree along the edge of the creek and then blow our wind back down into the river channel, the deer may come right by us. I mean, it worked last year, we just didn't get in the stand in time. It's not perfect by no means, but it could work. That one there isn't bad. I tend to get ahead of myself a lot of times when we're scouting like this, and I'll find the spot and then mark it on the map and say that's good enough, and then want to go find more spots. And what you really need to do once you get to the exact location where you want to hunt is you got to pick the right tree right then and there, because it's going to save you time down the road. I mean, that's why we're out here in the first place today, is so that it saves us time. We're going to scout this access route. We've got it picked all the way in here to this spot. Now we're trying to pick the correct tree. Because last fall when Eric and I set up down there and had that buck come by, that's why we didn't kill him, is because we weren't set up in the stand in time. And the reason why we weren't set up in the stand in time is because we hadn't scouted it, and we spent way too much time picking the correct tree. I mean, I don't know what else we could have done differently in that sense other than do what we're doing right now. And that's come in and make all these plans way ahead of time. Pick the exact tree. That's what Greg and I are looking at. We're thinking how we can get in this big, 4-trunk maple with a couple of stands. And it's doable. I mean, we can come right up here, step into this crotch, then put the sticks on here, go up this trunk, and then hang on this back side on this other trunk. Sometimes we'll run into a tree that's too big and our sticks won't fit around them. But if it's the right tree, we know we got to get into it, then we'll make a note of it on our map when we get back. And when we come in to hunt, we'll bring a ratchet strap to run around the stick so that we can get into the tree. It's all that little bitty stuff like that that eventually gets you shots at bucks. We've also accepted the fact that it's usually a complete rodeo when there's two of us, regardless of how much planning we do. So take that with however many grains of salt you wish. I went ahead and marked it. We'll go try to find something better. There's some more trees down the river here, and then back to the south. We got to walk over there too. A decent tree right here. What we did is that crossing that we came across the creek on is about 40 yards long. And I don't want to be sitting on this side of the river right in the middle of that crossing. Where Greg and I came up out of there was a pretty beaten path. It's one that the deer use often. And I don't want to sit right on top of that. I want to sit either north or south of it and then blow it just off wind that goes up or down the river. So right now we're at the south end of the crossing over here. We're going to hunt this on a northwest wind that blows it down the river, because most of the deer are going to cross the river right here. And what you're hoping to do there is intercept two different paths of travel. You've got the cruising trails that run down through here. This is all bedding along the west side of these maple trees. In the rut, with the wind blowing out of that bedding cover, which would be a west wind, these bucks will cruise down this edge on the downwind side. I mean, that's exactly what they were doing last year when we were hunting in here in this travel corridor. But to get the most out of these stands in the rut, you're probably only going to get one chance at them. So you want to make sure that you're upping your odds as much as possible. We try to sit these crossings so that we get two different paths of travel. You can get bucks coming out of there, out of this bedding area over here to the east, crossing the river right here, and then hooking on to these, I guess, trails in the middle of this funnel and potentially coming by the stand. So you got travel this way, you got travel this way, you got a stand right here with a northwest wind that's going down the middle of that river. But that tree that Greg and I found a minute ago with those 4 trunks in it is on the north side of the crossing. You can hunt it with a southwest. You can hunt this tree with a northwest. The spot looks really good. We're scouting primarily for rut stand today. And I think I mentioned that earlier, but just to reinforce that, that's what we're looking for. Not so much buck bedding. I mean, there is buck bedding in and around here, and Greg and I are going to get into that in the next video. This is kind of be part of a series of videos from today's scouting mission. We're trying to break this stuff down a little bit more detail for you guys. Perfect little rut stand though. I mean, this is exactly what we're looking for. Downwind side of bedding, multiple cruising trails. And even though there's hunting pressure over there on that side where we saw the doe a while ago, we still would hunt that area early season. In those spots where we were talking about those observation stands, that would be a location that we would sit opening day, opening week. Just because those bucks, they'll move out into that stuff. There's good bedding cover all out through there, plenty of browse. I mean, on both sides of the river, they have similar cover. So with an absence in pressure during the summer, they'll move into that stuff, and during the early season, before everybody gets in here, it can be a good option. But come the rut, that's why we're scouting the opposite side of the creek, is by November 5th through the 10th, a lot of folks will be coming in here and hunting, and that will get burnt out really fast because it's the easiest stuff to access. That's it for this video, guys. Thank you all for joining us, and be sure to keep watching the channel for the next couple days. We'll have more scouting videos from today's trip and throughout the week. So, see you next time.